Okay, I'd like to call to order for the meeting for the Sylvania Township Board of Zoning Appeal. And could we please take the roll?
Mrs. Sieg? Here. Mr. Halberg?
Here.
Mr. Amos?
Here.
Mr. Hayes?
Here.
Okay, I'd asked if we have a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of February 4th.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mrs. Sieg?
Yes.
Mr. Halberg?
Yes. We have no minutes from March because we had no meeting. So we'll go on to old business. And before we do that, I will ask anybody here tonight who is going to want to speak, if I could ask you to raise your right hand. And do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth to the best of your knowledge? Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And when you do come up to the podium, please sign in and your name and address up there, and we'll go from there. Okay. The first item under old business is a variance request for a reduction in the rear yard landscape strip from 30 feet to 25 feet at 5464. Can we... maybe I'll just mention, all three, and then, because your report, I assume, is on all three. Right. Along with that, we have a variance request for reduction in a side yard landscape strip from 5 feet required down to 1 foot. And then the last one with the same case is a variance request for reduction in the front yard landscape strip from 15 feet to 10 feet. At this point, if we could get the staff report, please.
The applicant seeks 3 variances in order to construct a 4,800 square foot retail building on a vacant lot. Section 1405 of the Sylvania Township zoning resolution requires a 30-foot rear setback for main buildings, accessory buildings, parking, or access drives that abut a residential use. The applicant is seeking a 5-foot variance in order to place parking spaces in the rear of the property and leaving only a 25-foot setback from the residential property to the north. Section 3001 of the Sylvania Township zoning resolution states, landscape shall be required around the perimeter of a parcel located within any commercial or industrial district and meet the following minimum depths. It goes on to state that the minimums for a commercial district are 15 feet in the front and 5 feet on the sides. The second request is for a 5-foot variance from the front landscape requirement, thus leaving a 10-foot landscape strip in front of the first row of parking spaces. Lastly, the applicant requests a 4-foot variance from the side landscape requirement along the east side of the parcel. This request would leave 1 foot of landscape strip along the east side. The applicant asserts that all required building setbacks will be met. This project would be subject to the project plan review process, and issues such as landscaping, fencing materials, cross-access, traffic, stormwater management, grading, etc. would be addressed by the respective entities at that time. Staff recommends partial approval of this variance request. Due to the non-conforming front setback of the adjacent buildings, especially the one to the west, staff maintains that there are special circumstances presenting a constraint to the applicant's planned project and therefore recommends approval of the 5-foot front yard landscape strip variance. Staff is also recommending approval of the 4-foot variance to the east side landscape strip. It is the desire of the zoning department to see a cross-access agreement between the applicant and the owner of the parcel to the east. Staff recommends, however, denial of the rear yard setback variance request. The 30-foot setback of commercial uses from an abutting residential use is in the Sylvania Township zoning resolution to provide a suitable buffer protecting the residential properties from higher intensity uses. The commercial property to the east exceeds this requirement. There's no extraordinary difficulty preventing this applicant's reasonable use of the commercial property while meeting the rear yard setback requirement.
All right. At this point, does the board have any comments? If not, we're going to ask if somebody's here on behalf of this matter that would like to speak. Please sign in.
My name is John Sperry with Thomas DeBose and Associates. I guess what I'd like to do is just kind of start with the discussions on the rear yard variance request of 5 feet abutting residential. Tonight we brought an exhibit that exhibits an 8-foot board-on-board type privacy fence along with a 2-foot mound and some heavy landscaping in order to assure that we're going to give everything that we can as far as giving that proper landscape buffer short of the 5 foot that we're requesting as a variance from 30 to 25 feet. This allows us to build a standard depth retail building at 60-foot depth, which is usually looked at by national accounts for standard depth retail for example, Five Guys or Radio Shack or whatever it may be. That is not the proposed use for this retail building at the moment, but we're looking at the future for our client and the building owner, that if such a time the proposed business would no longer be there, he would be left with a 60-foot standard depth type retail building that he could divide up and possibly get some national accounts in there as far as that goes. Another thing, with the 60-foot depth building, we would be able to put a proposed cooler that we were going to have in this establishment inside of the building instead of putting it out back in the drive area. So basically what we're trying to do is salvage a row of parking, a drive aisle, get a standard 60-foot depth building, and be able to put a cooler indoors as opposed to outdoors. So that was the main reason why we're asking for a 5-foot setback variance on the rear parking abutting the residential.
It's just a desire to, to have a 60-foot building. There's nothing requirement there. And if it's oversized for the lot, it's oversized for the lot.
I could agree, but again, if it was the sake of requesting a 5-foot rear yard parking variance, we should go about that channel in order to at least ask for that request. With some pretty good reason for the 60-foot standard depth, that rear row of parking, as well as the aisleway. We can't move the building forward at all because we're locked in with the front yard setback, and we are adjoining the alignment with the existing building to the east at that point.
Another question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
In regards to the type of fence in the back, what type of fence is that?
Illustrated on the drawing is a board-on-board wood stained fence. I believe the client had mentioned that a possibility might put a white PVC there, unless you're going to regulate, what type of fence would be required. But it's either going to be a rough sawn board-on-board or the white PVC, unless you have a recommendation.
We can't regulate it, but we can suggest it.
Okay.
Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
Well, there's also some code requirements, I believe, on the materials and heights.
I like to use the term Taylor Cadillac put up a fence. And ever since I've been on this board, every commercial building that we've put up or had a variance on, they've agreed to put that type of fence up. It's a nice PVC white fence. It's a lot better than anybody else has it across the back of there, but it assures them people they can't see the cars. And I believe it's 6 foot. Just my personal opinion on that, and I thought that interject to you.
Would you agree to a white PVC? We would agree to the white PVC to match the Cadillac.
Daryl, I'm just saying, if they, in order to comply with the current setbacks, if they were to do a cooler outside, is that going to become an issue for us on the setback, or is that's not considered a permanent structure? Maybe throwing something I just was wondering if that...
So that would be considered an accessory structure, which still would have to conform to the setbacks.
Right. So obviously, if you're going to have it, it's probably preferred to be inside. Okay.
I just wanted to mention one other thing. The position that we're in with that drive aisle and the rear parking there and requesting the 5-foot variance, if we had some sort of options, I mean, we can easily, due to the width of the property get any kind of angled parking and, kind of clockwise action around the other side of the building. I mean, it wouldn't be feasible. We would diminish the square footage of the building considerably having a drive on each side. So I just wanted to throw that in because I believe that the property to the east has parking back there as well as an aisle, but it's probably toggled down based on the fact that it would be required to be angled parking with only one-way traffic flow.
That part to the right, is this a drive-through right there? To the right of the building would be,
Where it says that just adjacent pavement.
yeah, just to the right of that?
Yeah, it's a
That'd be
drive-
just
it's a
a
driveway.
driveway. Which is just open land right now anyway, go
Right.
between the buildings.
Is that what you envision? I know the staff has asked about having access. Were you planning on keeping it level and open?
Well, we all know how it actually works is during final site plan approval, we'll probably be asked as one of the recommendations from Lucas County to provide a cross-access area that we would deed over to the property to the east, meaning that it would be nice if the property to the east would deed it back to us, but with the laws, you can't force that type of thing. So we would keep grading to the point where it would be accessible to share, a cross-shared agreement through there, as far as being able to drive over to the existing driveway to the east.
How far the curb cuts are, I mean, they've got their own curb cut proposed down here. So those curb cuts are really close.
We actually have two curb cuts across our 100-foot frontage, and we're eliminating the curb cut to the farthest to the west in order to help the intersection at Monroe and Whiteford. See, there's an existing curb cut,
Right, right. Which is
so there's actually two of them there.
Did you talk to the fire department on this?
No.
Is there enough room to get the pumper through and everything?
All that would come out for
Yeah,
project plan review.
that's later.
The
Okay.
fire department review.
I didn't know if you had a minimum they had to get.
I'm sure they do.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Sperry on this? Anything else you wanted to add?
No.
Okay. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on behalf of this matter? Come right up and please sign in and let us know your name and...
Yeah. I'm Rick Deeb, and I own the property just to the east of the subject property, and correct, 5450 Monroe Street. And, looking at the rendering here, or the plan, the building looks a little big for that space, and to go from a 5-foot to a 1-foot variance for the landscape requirement, I mean, it seems, you're talking about an 80% reduction in what's required. It seems excessive to me. Where is I don't understand where the parking is going to be. Is it going to be in the back? I'm not real clear on. This is the first time I've seen this, so it's a little new to me.
They've got 7 spots in front, 7 spots in front, and then 11 in the back.
Okay.
Actually, I haven't done your 1425. Is that, John, is that per code, or is it, you're going to need a variance on that?
No, we'll be okay based on the parking requirements with those stalls there.
24 looks like it has exactly.
Now, if we eliminate
Yeah,
that
just-
row, we might have to talk.
Right.
Right, the requirement is one space for 200.
200, so 24.
24 spaces.
Yeah, he's got enough. Okay.
Right now, they're at 25.
And then the building, is it parallel with mine, with 5450, or is it out? I can't really tell by looking at that.
Looks like it's right across.
Okay,
It's not out like the other one.
okay,
It's right across.
okay.
Right? Make sure I'm
It's in
not
line with the building to the east.
to the east.
East.
I have some concerns with coming up and, changing that variance from 5 foot to 1 foot on the east side. I just think it's a little excessive.
How deep is your building, do you know?
How deep? Well, it's just under an acre. I don't know the depth.
Depth of the
Well,
building.
he was talking that a standard 60-foot that he was looking at, and yours looks like it's less than 60. so-
I think it is. Yeah, I don't think you're 60 feet deep. Yeah, I don't recall. Not much smaller. I think it might be a little smaller.
Longer this way than it is.
Yeah, it's much
right.
longer. Okay. Any questions for Mr. Deeb? Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments regarding this matter? Anybody else here to speak on this? No, none of the neighbors are here. Okay. That being said, as I say,
Do we want to see all three and
want to do that?
back?
That's fine.
We probably should.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to hear all the cases, then we're going to go into session, and then we'll come back and we will vote on all the matters tonight. So if you want to stick around, we're going to move on to the next case right now, and then we won't actually do our vote until after. Okay, with that said, we're going on to the next old business. A variance request for reduction in the front setback from 35 feet to 5.98 feet provided at 4739 and 4777 Corey Road. Staff report, please.
The applicant is seeking a variance from section 603 of the Sylvania Township zoning resolution requiring a 35-foot front setback from the public right-of-way of Corey Road in order to construct an addition to the existing single-family dwelling. The proposed addition would include a garage on the front side that would be 5.98 feet from the right-of-way at the closest point and 10 feet from the right-of-way at the farthest point. The right-of-way extends approximately 30 feet from the center line of Corey Road. The subject site consists of two wedge-shaped parcels. Nearly all of the existing home sits on 4739 Corey Road. The proposed addition would be on 477 Corey Road. 10 Mile Creek bisects the parcels running north-south through the approximate center of the lots. Approximately two-thirds of the property is either in the floodway or the floodplain. There is a significant decrease in elevation from roadside to creekside. The applicant feels that the hillside and odd shape of the parcel poses multiple challenges and that the proposed plan offers a safer building and easier access to the garage from the existing driveway. Corey Road is a township road and unlikely to ever be widened. Staff recommends approval of this variance request. While the triangular shape of the parcels is not uncommon in Sylvania Township, that factor coupled with the exceptional topographical conditions does create an unusual and difficult building site. As the subject parcels are two separate lots, it is reasonable to assume that if they had two individual owners, those owners may apply for and be granted separate variances from the front setback requirement. Lastly, the granting of this variance would create no substantial detriment to the adjoining properties or alter the character of the general neighborhood.
Okay. Any board members have any questions?
Yeah, I got a couple. I can't tell from the thing, I went out and looked at the site today, what would be the distance from from the structure to the curb, existing curb? I mean, I assume that's more than the 6 feet. So, I don't know if this is the curb,
Right.
where that is.
That probably is the curb, because the center line of Corey Road is right.
really, my question is, how big of a driveway would he have under this proposal?
Yeah, this is the center line of Quarry Road right here.
That doesn't show the building there.
The current building? It's right here.
And this is not square. That's what it is.
This doesn't actually have the measurement on it, but it kind of an indication.
This looks like it's the curb. I mean, there's a fair distance for a driveway or whatever space,
The driveway,
a side entrance. Can read that right. Is this going to be two level or a single level?
it's too loud, but I'll be closer to it.
I guess the other question, do you know, is that a retaining wall or is that something else in the structure? It goes really close to that creek when I was looking at it today.
Probably is one of the next question.
So why don't we have, is there somebody here on behalf of the applicant?
Yes.
I can ask you to sign that.
Mr. Amos? In '83, the property owner received a variance to construct the original house where it was. A 10-foot variance from the 35-foot required front setback.
My name is Brian Arbon, I'm representing the owner on this. And to answer one of the first questions regarding the driveway, it's going to be a natural extension back toward the river and then straight into the side load garage. That's Caesar, so that is not going to go any closer to the road.
And do you know how close the proposed structure would be to the curb?
I don't have that exact number, it's in the 20s. I think the extension is 5.98 closer to the road. Center line being what the center line was and the curb, the double line right there. That is all going to be landscaped, not to cover the building, but just to cover all the surrounding, the adjoining property to the north. What you do see is a retaining wall to the west of the property down right there. That is a retaining wall.
Scary drop off there.
This is a nicer drop-off than the other proposed plan that was in play at one point. The other driveway was heading back to the north, and it was allowing a drastic driveway down with a grade that would have been very difficult to get out of in the wintertime or inclement conditions. The redevelopment of this, in bringing that the garage up to the upper level and in the position that it is, allows, again, for a little bit safer structure all the way around, as there is another bearing wall, retaining wall connected to the home. It's at 2417.
Level addition?
It's a two-level addition. You've got the main and then the lower, matching the existing home that's there.
Any other questions?
What about the site line we're talking about? Where does that come into play?
I think meeting the criteria of a unique site, I think that's accomplished.
Traffic from the north.
Okay. No other questions? Is there anyone else here to speak on behalf of this matter? Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. That said, I believe at this point we'll move on to new business. And we have a variance request for a reduction in the front setback from 35 feet required to 23 feet provided for at 5351 Bainbridge Road. Daryl, can we get the staff report, please, on this?
The applicant is seeking a variance from Section 603 of the Sylvania Township zoning resolution requiring a 35-foot front setback from the public right-of-way of Corey Road in order to construct a 24-foot by 32-foot accessory structure 23 feet from the right-of-way, a variance of 12 feet. This accessory structure would be a woodworking shop for personal hobby use and not a commercial enterprise. The 24-foot by 32-foot structure will essentially be a 2.5-car garage for future resale purposes. The subject property is a corner lot and thus must subscribe to the required front setback requirement of 35 feet for both street frontages. The applicant wishes to construct the accessory structure in line with his current driveway, which is 24 feet from the right-of-way. The right-of-way line is approximately 30 to 35 feet from the center line of Corey Road. The applicant has other site options for the accessory structure, but feels that these would be less aesthetically acceptable to neighboring properties. Additionally, the rear of the applicant's property is at a lower elevation than the desired site, and building here could pose some drainage issues to the applicant's and neighboring property. Corey Road is a township road and unlikely to ever be widened. Staff recommends approval of this variance request. The granting of this variance would create no substantial detriment to the adjoining properties or alter the character of the general neighborhood.
Thank you. Any questions so far?
One thing, could you go back a couple slides to the picture overhead? It showed the,
Which one?
probably that one. I just noticed when out there, the proposed structure would be over here, and really that corner of the house is pretty well in line with the other houses on Corey, so it does stick out.
Yeah, I don't think we're seeing any variances along the Corey Road line like that.
What'd you say?
That's just
I
not.
mean, I don't think it's pretty consistent along Corey Road.
Yeah.
It was within
Front
about
of it,
50 foot. Anyone here to speak on behalf of this matter? Please. Start with the applicant, I assume.
Yes, sir. I'm Raymond Gregory. I am the property owner. And what I'm looking at, as stated, is basically a 2.5-car garage centered on the existing driveway. It is a side-loading garage, and you've got a turnaround area when you back out. I'd like to center on that. That's the reason for the requested variance, is so I could center the doors and then have 1 foot on each side of the driveway for the outside walls of the structure. Mentioned it is 2.5-car garage for resale value. Its use will be woodworking, as stated. I'm a hobbyist. And the last shop that I gave up in Dayton, Ohio before I moved here, the start of this year, this would be very similar. It was insulated from floor to crown of the roof, heated, air-conditioned, so you don't sweat, you don't get cold. I could go out and turn on the tools and work at any time whatsoever, and you could not hear a sound. When I say insulated, it was insulated to control the noise anytime I was out there. I do not work early in the morning. I do not work late at night. Not with power tools. They make too much noise, and I don't want to run the risk of inconvenience. In laying out the desired location, I look for a method, a type of structure that would have minimal impact in terms of variances. Going with a detached building, which I have shown in the illustration of the drawing, you would not need a variance to the property at the rear of my house. And I would still be 16 feet from that property line, as opposed to I think it's 6 is what's required by the zoning regulations. And that's what I was looking at, and that's also the simplest structure. This Saturday, my neighbor asked, have you heard about the concerns that some neighbors have? What concerns? Deed restrictions on the property. It says there will be no detached buildings. First question was, what deed restrictions? Saturday before Easter Sunday, you don't find much. I spent all day today talking to every place in the world to find out what those restrictions are. And the concern from those restrictions is there should be no detached buildings. And it says everything should be approved by the Architectural Control Committee or whatever. What is that? Because what I have been told so far, even before I bought the building, is there is no homeowners association. It's gone belly up and inactive. Along with that, there is no architectural review panel. It's gone inactive. So in terms of conforming to the letter of the deed restrictions as far as the coordination and approvals, from what I can see right now, I've not been able to find out who these people are, their charter, authorities, nothing. So I cannot conform to the letter of the process they would like to follow. It is my intent, if they have concerns, to conform to the spirit of that deed restriction, which would be to go from a detached structure to a attached structure. It changes the offset requirements around my property. Maybe. I'm looking at new alternatives, and I'm still researching that. At this time, I would request that the variance request to the 35-foot offset off of the frontage area facing the quarry be approved. What that gives me is basically the approval to build a structure centered on the end of that driveway. The nature of that structure, how I would attach it, and what else would be required for that, I need to then start talking to the architecture, the actual layout, and the design of that. That information will be presented when I request the building permit to start work. But I need a variance approval so I know I can put a structure there before I start spending money for an architect to design a building in a space I may not know I could even use. So I recognize there are concerns in the warranty deed that other neighbors have expressed. I should point out, I have not talked to any of them. I don't know who they are. I do not know in detail what their concerns are. I'm guessing right now. But it is my intent to be sure that I do not do anything at that location to detract from this plat. I do not want to do anything that disturbs anything in way of resale values, appearance. And I realize I am the first house you see when you turn into that plat. It sets a standard. And I have the concerns they have. So with that, sir, I would request approval.
Thank you. How long have you said you've lived there?
I moved here in January, after the new year.
Okay, so recently.
Very recently, yes,
So
sir.
at closing, can I assume that you received some type of title work?
I did not.
You did not?
I received a title that says I have, here is my warranty deed, I have that. I did not receive any information on the deed restrictions. I did not know there were any. Everything I was...
Those are of record, those are recorded, and those...
And I found them, I drove down to one government plaza, whatever, today and received a copy of them. That's the first I had seen them, first I was aware. The neighbor behind me, when he closed on his house in the year 2000, I think, he was given a copy of those at the time of closing. I have certifications from the seller as far as the homeowners association. It states there is no homeowner association. They went inactive a number of years ago. Today I talked with one of the neighbors across the street. She confirmed there is no homeowners association. There is no architecture review council. They went inactive. But I now know what that deed restriction is. It was not mentioned anywhere before. I did not have a copy. I had no knowledge of it. So I spent today researching that document, looking at what I have to do to the structure to be sure that I conform to the intent of those restrictions.
fortunately, if they're, they are a record, and
Understand.
whether you had seen it or not doesn't, really allow it to go away. So they are there, and I guess, obviously, that's why you're here for a variance. But saying you want to be consistent with the spirit, I think if you'll look at, the spirit of Corey Road, I think it's pretty consistent that, there are variances for.
When I say the spirit, the thing requires that everything that you do basically be approved by the Architecture Review Committee in writing.
Well,
And I
that's,
don't know who that committee is.
but that's different than this body. You're coming here for a variance.
Understand.
And what you would do, that's a separate approval or disapproval or what have you. But what you're here before today is for a variance, and we have certain standards, we have no choice legally that we have to go
Yeah.
by. And, I'm not sure by code that I'm hearing, I'm just off the top, that I'm hearing anything that would warrant, doing that. So it's not, architecturally or how nice,
Okay.
but there are criteria that you need to follow, and I think they're right on the application
Yes.
that provides why you would need to do it.
Yes, and the offset is 35 feet, and I want to put in an additional two-car garage, as other folks have on the same street.
Sure.
And to have that centered on my driveway would require a 12-foot variance.
Right.
And that's the variance I'm requesting. It's for the placement of a building. And it has a better appearance. In addition to my 35-foot offset from the property line, in addition, at my location, there is something like a 39-foot easement between me and Corey Road. So I'm not getting real close to Corey Road in any way. There is ample room there. I'm not disturbing any of the trees that are there for noise abatement or anything like that. I'm just after placement of a building on my facility, on my land.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Yes, sir.
And I was out looking at your property this afternoon. The stakes in the backyard, I assume, were approximately where
Yes.
your structure would be?
What I was doing was checking to see just exactly, if I get the approval to the variance, where it would go so I could see how it looks. And the reason is I'm coordinating with the neighbor directly to the back, so he could visually see exactly where it would sit in relation to our property lines to see if he has any concern. That's all. I wanted to see it. I didn't want to rely on a piece of paper. I wanted to physically
Yeah,
see
no,
it.
I didn't want to guess that that's what it was, so I just...
That was me
wanted to
looking. That is not planning for construction. That is not a contractor layout to start digging. That's me. I'm a visual person.
Yeah, and that's why I came out and looked at your property, because I need to see things with my eyeballs.
Yes, and that's the whole intent of that. And if you went there right now, you would see some additional stakes that are moved as I'm looking what it would take to position to make it attached to my house. I want to visually see what it would look like so I can think about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on behalf of this matter? Please.
Wish I had a little more room, but I am attorney Marvin Jacobs. I live 2 doors from where Mr. Gregory lives. We've lived in our house and moved into that subdivision over 45 years ago. We moved there because of the character of the development, the quality of the homes, and the restrictions that were required and that were of record. I have visited people in the area, in the immediate area, although I don't know whether you realize this, but Bentbrook Farms has 127 parcels, and it runs all the way from our side of the road to the golf course of Sylvania Country Club and goes to the Arboretum of the University of Toledo. And I think part of it might even be to the Boy Scout reservation. But anyway, I visited people in the immediate area. The notice that we received about 10 days ago. And I didn't find out what the details about this until the first part of last week. It is true that we don't have an active homeowners association. However, we do have. First of all, I didn't know you had some of the information you have, but I have some additional information which I'll furnish to everybody involved here. I have 3 exhibits here, and I'll give you 2 copies of these so you can show these. The first one shows the dimensions, which I think you already have, and the other 2 are aerial views of the lot. This particular lot in Bentwood Farms is one of the smallest lots that there are. I estimated the value of the property in Sylvania Township. Some of the properties in Plat 4 are state properties, and the value is in excess of $50 million. I want to point out to you that the setback in the plat, the recorded plat, calls for 50 feet from Quarry Road. And the development of this was done by Nick Boreski. He happened to build our house. The house that was built for Mr. Gregory was built by a gentleman by the name of Ken Lord. And he's known for having a lot of interior space in the houses that he builds. The restrictions are recorded in the mortgage records, volume 2094, page 37. The purpose of these restrictions are to give everyone notice of what they are. And they're constructive notice whether you get a copy of them or not. They were recorded in the year 1963. The restrictions that I want to call to your attention are Section 1, Article 1. It says all lots in Bentbrook Farms shall be known and described as residential lots. Hereafter, no structure shall be erected on any residential lot other than one single-family private residence purposes dwelling, including attached garage. It shall be an integral part of the dwelling. Said dwelling shall be used and occupied solely and exclusively for private resident purposes by a single family, including such family servants. Then there's another section that I want to call to your attention. This is Section 13 of Article 1, and that reads, no outbuilding of any type will be permitted in Bentbrook Farms. Now, his application calls for a detached building. Now he's talking about adding a building and having it attached. This board has no authority to grant any of that. But I'll just say that the size of this lot, there's no other lot in Bentbrook Farms that has a 24, whatever the dimensions of that is fairly large, 24 by, what was it, 24 by what? 32. 24 by 32, addition added onto it. And in my estimation, this structure on his lot would destroy the value of his building. That's up to him, but he cannot, it will change the character of the whole subdivision. This building is right at the corner of Bainbridge and Quarry Road. And we are prepared to go to court to see that these restrictions are enforced if necessary. And it's not, in his original application, he gave 3 other alternate locations in the backyard for this structure to be. And if he thinks he can attach it to the house in some way, there's going to be drainage problems. It's out of character for the neighborhood. There's nothing like that in this neighborhood at all. And this subdivision is one of the elite subdivisions in Sylvania Township, and I can assure you it's the largest one also. It's in the same character as Westchester Woods or Tall Oaks. And I don't believe he'll ever be able to get a building permit for this, either unattached or attached, because It's out of character for the neighborhood, it's out of character for this lot. There's not even going to be any place for the water to drain. I think it will create a multitude of problems, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
So, I mean, at this point, attached or unattached, yeah.
It's not a
I mean,
township.
the issue is with the variance and at this point, he's indicated in his application that it'll be unattached, but also will need a variance. Is there any questions for Mr. Jacobs? Jacobs, are you new to the legal profession? How many years have you been doing this, can I ask?
Well, I was admitted to the bar in 1953. I went into service for 2 years, and I've been practicing ever since. And I once was a member of this board, when Lucille Lasky was chairman of the committee.
Thank you.
And I might also say, if you look at the people that have opposed this, it includes federal judge Richard Carr, Jim Carr and his wife Eileen. They live a couple doors away on the other side of the street on Farmington. And I haven't found anyone that felt that this type of construction on this lot was a good idea. I mean, it is really, truly a very bad idea. And it's unfortunate that we have to try to welcome Mr. Gregory with this type of thing, but if we were even on the other side of the fence, I would feel the same way. In other words, if I wanted to put up a structure of that kind at the end of my driveway to have some cars that I want to display for my own personal pleasure and not have it as a commercial venture, I don't think that would be right. And I would never even ask for it.
Thank you. And Darrell, along those lines, there may be some other people, but we received some emails and a letter.
Right.
And so that'll all be in the record. Is everybody, just look for
Yep.
everybody.
Seen the letter, haven't seen the emails.
There's one from Dan Klein, who's a neighbor, and another, and a letter from Shoemaker. Yeah, I just wanted to,
Mr. Schumacher.
they took the time to do that, and I want to make sure everybody on the board got a chance to at least see those. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Jacobs. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak on behalf of this matter? Just 1 second, you'll get a chance. Is there anyone else? Okay, sir, come back up if you want to speak.
Yeah, I'd like to point out one comment that was made. He said there was no other structure, no other houses within the plat that had structures of this type. As a detached building, I agree wholly, I have not found one. As an attached, additional 2.5-car garage, I've been going around because I want to be in line with the neighborhood. There is an additional 2.5-car garage at 5340 Bainbridge. There's another one at 5330 Bainbridge. There's another one at 5320 Bainbridge. Checking the aerial photographs within the areas, is that what it's called? Mm-hmm. These were installed, I think, somewhere around 2005, 2006 in that thing. But there are 3 houses. They're right in the same area, right diagonally across the street from me, all of which have added 2.5-car garages.
Attached.
Attached. Yeah, attached.
That's a bit of a mistake. 2 of them added a 1-car garage.
Are they 1-car garages?
5320 and 5330. We had a 2-car garage, we added a 1-car.
You added a 1-car. Okay.
Also, these lots are considerably bigger than his lot. His lot is one of the smallest lots in the entire subdivision.
Okay. And we're going to, I don't know if we know if they needed a variance and they may have done everything within. It's kind of, right now, that's sort of irrelevant. But I appreciate.
Yeah, that's all I have. It's just one comment is I noticed there were some additional. I have been looking at them, and I started talking to one of them about which architect did they use and how did they do that.
Okay, thank you.
So it's okay.
Anybody else to speak on this matter?
Sorry, I don't believe I gave you the signatures as I have.
I was wondering, yeah, I heard that there was some, we could, want to give
This
us.
is Exhibit 4.
What's your step?
I'm trying to see which is the originals, because I got 3 signatures after I left my office.
Don't give us the originals.
Okay, those are Our neighbor 2 doors away, Seal Bennett, Dr. Bott and Mrs. Bott are here. They're across the street. Mrs. Alspaugh is the one that just spoke. And then on Farmington is Judge Carr, James Carr and his wife Eileen. And,
Are they looking at the same thing you have?
right.
Okay.
And then Nancy Smythe lives on Quarry Road, almost across the street from there. And Patricia Wesley lives on Farmington, right next to Judge Carr. And there's this is, Red Shoemaker sent you a letter that his wife signed this. He was still at the office when he got this signed.
Thank you.
Can I get a copy of that, please?
Sure.
I'll have to make a photocopy of it. This is my only copy.
This will go into the record, I assume.
Okay.
I'll get you a copy, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if that is the last discussion on that matter, we are going to adjourn shortly and then be back. So I don't think we decided we don't need a motion for this adjournment?
No,
No, we don't. Okay, so we're just going to take a...
we never did before.
We're going to deliberative session.
Yeah.
No, we're just going to go to deliberative session and we'll be back shortly.
You can tell them if they don't want to wait.
Or not so shortly.
Hey, if they don't want to wait, we can contact them.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anyone on a time, I mean, we will come back and decide on these tonight. If anyone's under a time crunch, obviously, if you contact the zoning office, they'll be able to let you know the decisions, and then they come out in the mail and eventually online.
Just to let them know that. I make a motion that we accept the variance request for a reduction in the rear yard landscape strip from 30 feet required to 25 feet provided for at 5464 Monroe Street.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Hayes?
No.
Mr. Amos?
No.
Mrs. Sieg?
No.
Mr. Helper?
No. Okay, on to the next request. We have a motion for the next item.
I make a motion that we accept the variance request for a reduction in the side yard landscape strip from 5 foot required to 1 foot provided for at 5464 Monroe Street with a conditional curb set on that property line.
Okay, do I have a second?
It's second.
No discussion, vote?
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mrs. Sieg?
Yes.
Mr. Helper?
Yes. And I just want to make clear, did you catch about the curbing?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay. And one more.
Make a motion that we accept variance request for a reduction in the front yard landscape strip from 15 feet required to 10 foot provided for at 5464 Monroe Street.
Second.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mrs. Sieg?
Yes.
Mr. Helper?
Yes. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve a variance request for a reduction in front setback from 35 feet required to 5.98 feet provided at 4739 and 4777 Quarry Road.
We have a second?
I second it.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mrs. Sieg?
Yes.
Mr. Helper?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve variance request for reduction in the front setback from 35 feet required to 23 feet provided for 5351 Bainbridge Road.
Is there a second?
I make a second. Second.
Mr. Amos?
No.
Mr. Hayes?
No.
Mrs. Sieg?
No.
Mr. Helper?
No. Okay, thanks everybody for sticking around, and with there being no further, nothing else on the agenda, can I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned. All right.
I would get home for popcorn and a movie with grandkids.